Welcome to the Common Climber Training Tips. My name is Collin McGee, and with me is fellow climber and coach, Nick Hare. Today we're going to talk about the high step and what goes into it. We're going to talk about the basics of hip range of motion, and then we're going to go over some fundamental and basic exercises to start strengthening your hip in that range of motion necessary to get your foot in control and getting on those high footholds. The hip starts off very simply with rotational range of motion. So what Nick is going to be doing is just taking a seat on the table with the leg facing the camera as best as possible. What we're talking about is how well the hip rotates this way, or external rotation, and how well the hip rotates this way, or internal rotation. With range of motion, there are two things. We talk about passive range of motion, which is the potential for the hip to move. That is me doing all the work. Nick is off right now. And then we have active range of motion, or what Nick can control. So I'll have Nick try and match that. What we're looking for is a close one-to-one. It will never be truly perfect, but what we're looking to address is if I can see a lot of range of motion, and then maybe he can't get as much, or if I can't even push into that. That's going to determine our training priorities, whether or not we need to increase range of motion, or we need to increase control over range of motion, or both. We would do that test with both external and internal range of motion. We also want to look to make sure that he's not compensating anywhere else along the body, which again shows us that we might have hip limitations. And then more specifically with the hip, I'll have Nick lie on his back. We're going to look at how well the knee can come up to his chest. Situate him a little bit. And again, I want to make sure that I have his spine and hips under control. If I go too far and he rolls under, that's not a hip. That is the spine compensating for limitations. So again, what we can do, and I can bend this knee for you, is look at passive, or how much I can work. And to check, I would keep my finger on his pelvis to make sure that it doesn't move. That's good, right? The knee is coming probably higher than his belly button. The other leg is not compensating it either. And then I would ask Nick, hey, match that for me. Boom. And also I would say, hey, match it for me again and make sure that nothing else is kicking in. Cool. So we have the two fundamental basics for the high step. How well the hip can rotate, some general range of motion, and then how well can the knee get into this high step position. The final thing we might want to look at is what is called abduction, or how well I can get my hips close to the wall while climbing. So go hands and knees and then face the camera. Let's go that way. You did?
Yeah,
you're good.
We're good.
All right. So again, sometimes we might have to just get a high step with the knee in front of us, but more likely we're going to have to also get a high step with our knee out to the side. That is going to be hip AB abduction. So what that looks like, and we'll just do a little active test here. A passive test will be a little different. I'll just have Nick kind of fire hydrant his knee out to the side. And we're looking for how far that works. And again, I want to see, can you give me a little 45-degree angle here? Or I'm sorry, you gotta go that way, there you go. And what we want to see as well is that the spine is not moving excessively, like so. You want to imagine that your favorite drink is being balanced on the lower part of your back, and that if it spills, that's your back moving and not your hip. So give me one more good one. Limited movement, and then give you a really bad one. Got the hip we need to work on. Thank you, sir. Now that we're done talking about the basics of range of motion within the hip and how it kind of sets your priorities of whether or not you need to change your range of motion, your strength, and or both, we're going to talk a little bit about how to start strengthening that hip. What we're going to do is use the wall for support and become more aware of our body. Again, we want to be using only our hip and not anything else. So very simply, a full range of motion high step just looks like a knee coming to the chest. Nick will go hand on wall. He will become a stone statue, and his left knee will come up as high and slow as possible, give a good squeeze, and then slowly descend. A bad rep might look like rounding of the back and bending of the knee. Stone statue, moving hip. How we can progress this, especially if our goal is strengthening that closer to end range, high step, we're going to use a box or something to cut off the bottom range of motion. And then all we would need is a yoga block or some other objects to start marking off ranges. So Nick will put his left foot up. Very good. And then we can start going from there. What this does is focus our efforts and energy in that end range so we can get more quality effort there. So he can show us a few lift-offs. Again, stone statue, only a moving hip, focusing on just the hip moving and nothing else. And an easy way to progress this is just adding load to this. We want to strengthen that hip. So something like an ankle weight, or even like a kettlebell, something placed over the toe is a great way to start strengthening that hip. Now, this is a good place to start, but again, we might have to get to the point where we are facing the wall, like we're face climbing, and that hip needs to come up and outside. So what Nick can do, I'll have him just kind of face the wall, be like a little quarter turn here, is we're gonna get him into that now end range abducted position or hip outside. So strengthening this position is not only gonna give you a better high step, but it's gonna give you a better high step with hips close to the wall control, which is gonna be very essential if you're working on small holds or trying to improve your technique. Very simply, we can do the same stuff. So Nick can do some lift-offs from that position. He's now feeling it in the top hip and on the side. We're looking for straight leg, a spine that's in control, and tension throughout. And again, a very simple way to progress these over the course of weeks is adding weight via an ankle weight or something strapped to the foot. 1 pound, then 2, so on and so forth, to maybe 10 or 15 pounds. So to recap what we learned, the hip has some basic range of motion requirements. We want to see good rotation, and for the high step, we want to see a knee that can come up, controlled predominantly by the hips and the quad muscle up here. We're also going to need range of motion with the hip to go out to keep our hips close to the wall if we have to use the high step while face climbing. We might have to increase our flexibility, we might have to increase our control and strength, or we might need to do both. Proper assessment is the way to go about that, and that's why finding a coach, either in person or online, is very helpful for your training success. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Common Climber, and please leave a comment, ask me any questions, and we'll see you next time.